Hey, Nat.
Hey, Andrea.
How are you?
Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been like super busy in my life.
Yeah, are you
Yeah.
working right now? I see you in the dark over there.
Oh, God.
Okay, we are live on Facebook.
There you are. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Are you working?
Well, I'm actually going to get the kid.
Working in a different capacity.
This freaking earpiece. That's gonna make me say potty words.
All right, I'm gonna go grab some props for tonight since we're talking about electrolytes. While we wait for some more folks to join us. So feel free to pop any questions in the chat.
Sorry, I'm trying my earpiece to connect. Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No. I don't know why it's doing this. So annoying. This is so annoying to me. There. I think I hear someone. There you are.
I found all of the electrolytes in the world that I have stockpiled here because I don't like them as much as Element and Redmond. And we're going to go through them tonight. Do a little hands-on workshop here. All of the electrolytes in the world.
Can you hear me, Natalie?
I can.
Okay, just doing a comms check.
Yay.
I never trust Zoom.
True indeed. Okay, cool. Let's make sure that the chat is working on Facebook. I can see the video, but I don't see comments. Let's go into the group. Try it from there. There we go. And I see Michelle on there. Cool. No worries. You can participate on here if you can, Michelle. Oh, great. We've got more peeps coming in. Get everybody in. Cool. Okay. Woot woot. We have a little group here. Okay. Tonight, y'all, I'm going to do something that I never do. I'm going to get a little sciencey, a little technical. Usually I don't do that, but I pulled out the stops. I pulled out my notes from my nutritional therapy studies. We got some fun stuff to talk about tonight, especially for the people who like to geek out on things. So, of course, as usual, there will be plenty of practical advice because I'm all about the practical advice and implementation in our lives rather than just science for science sake. But we'll dive into a little bit about minerals, about electrolytes, what they are, what they do in the body, why we need them, why we may or may not need to supplement with them. The questions that I got were great about amounts, rule of thumb for amounts. I will definitely get into that, about some specifics about amounts to supplement with or to get in your day. And then practically what that might look like and how detailed you need to be about that, about tracking your numbers. I had a question about, is it possible to overconsume electrolytes? So we'll definitely get into that. Liquid drops there was a question about liquid drops. So we will talk about where you can get some liquid drops as opposed to powders. Also, tablets is an option. Salting food. I had a question about salting food. How do you find your perfect balance of electrolytes? That's really going to be the key talking point here tonight. Recommendations for things other than my personal favorite element. And I have all of the electrolytes in the world to talk about tonight. I could share all these brands with you and tell you my pros and cons about them. I had a question about Soleil water. And making your own electrolytes. Can you grab me the potassium chloride? He walked in at the perfect moment. It's right on, it's on the countertop. Yes, thank you. Awesome.
I'm gonna
Say
crash.
hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm crashing. I know
Nice.
some of these people.
Yeah, you do. Michelle's not on the video
Michelle's not on.
tonight.
Tina,
She's
Andrea.
purging,
Who else?
cleaning.
Jennifer. I know everybody almost.
Yeah, gang's all here.
What's up, y'all? Are we talking
Um,
about electrolytes?
Electrolytes and hydration,
Oh.
water and electrolytes. Will you grab me my magnesium
Where is it?
in the cabinet?
You want to see mine too? You wanna get
Yeah.
mine?
Thank you.
Which one is?
It's the natural calm. I have two
Oh,
packages.
You want both of them?
Sure. I should take a picture of all these afterwards and show y'all the graveyard of supplements we have that we don't use. Some of them we do, some of them we don't. Okay, how do you know if you are properly hydrated? That is a really good question, and we're definitely going to get into that.
If you can spit and keep dehydrated.
It's a good one. It actually wasn't on my list, but
You can't spit, there's a problem.
as I sip. Okay, so let's get into the beats here. All right, first let's talk about hydration in regards to water consumption, because that question I get a lot. How much water should I be drinking? Is it half my body weight in ounces? Should I be drinking a gallon a day? In the fitness industry, that's what gets touted all over the place. A gallon a day, like totally arbitrary. I don't even know where that came from, why they started. Maybe it was bodybuilding, because bodybuilders carry around a gallon jug everywhere they go. So I imagine that it was the bodybuilding industry that got that gallon a day thing going. Okay, there is no general, I mean, is this really surprising that you would hear me say this? There is no recommendation for everyone that's a perfect, everybody should be doing X when it comes to water consumption. It is very individual. As when we get to electrolytes, I'll talk about that being individual as well. Oh my gosh, we have a kitty friend joining us. I love it. I'm living vicariously. One day we'll have one of those furry little
Sorry,
rabbits around
he thinks
here.
he's helping.
My
Maybe?
dog is
I don't
down
know.
here staring at me.
My second meal.
A
Yes, he
man's
thinks
gotta
it's
get
a
some
party. and
food
he's
in
very
his stomach.
social.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put these guys on.
Oh,
because
Tina,
they're-
it's beautiful.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm gonna
Tina.
join in the
Oh, cute.
Oh my gosh, it's bring your pet to
Bring your pet
Masterclass
to
Monday.
bring your pet to Zoom day.
I
Yeah.
love it. This just like warmed my heart so much. One day we're gonna have a little fluffy child around here. One day. Okay.
Be careful about what you wish for, though. It makes it really hard to travel.
True,
Yes.
true.
It really does impact
yes.
traveling in a big time. Yeah.
That is one of the reasons why we don't yet. And we want one of those big boys. What's the one, babe, that we want to get? Maine Coon.
Maine Coon, nice.
We're obsessed one day, but we need to have the space and not be traveling as much as we are now.
Or a good cat sitter.
Oh, true. Yeah, good news. Okay, so hydration. Okay, so for water consumption, there is not like a general rule for everyone, but there are some basic guidelines you can look at to know whether or not you are hydrated well. Matter of fact, I'm going to skip down here to the adequate intakes of water set by the National Academy of Medicine. This adequate intake level is it is set to prevent deleterious, primarily acute effects of hydration. So this does not mean it's ideal levels or recommended levels or levels we should aim for. This is adequate intake. So think of this as like a baseline. And this includes, by the way, water from everything that we consume. So drinking water, beverages, this includes coffee, tea, soft drinks, sparkling waters, anything that has a water content. It includes our food that has water content in it. So this is for everything, but this is like baseline. So just like if you're looking at the RDAs, like the RDA for protein, which is insanely low, and nobody should actually be using that as a recommendation for what they're trying to aim for in their day, but think about it as a low baseline level to fight hydration. So women between the ages of 19 and 70 plus, basically all women above puberty, minimum 74 ounces per day. Remember, this is from all water sources, so this is not like you have to be drinking 74 ounces a day in pure water. This is from all sources, but it is for adequate intake. This is what they're saying. Pregnant or lactating women, 77 ounces per day. So this is a little more than a half a gallon. When you think about it like that. I think that's a couple of liters. If I'm remembering correctly, how much is in a liter? I think it's like 33 fluid ounces or something like that.
Yeah.
So a little more than a couple of liters, a little more than half a gallon. But it varies widely. So let's talk about some of the recommendations from the Nutritional Therapy Association, their comprehensive approach to hydration and what they recommend for us as therapists to work with our clients on. Drinking to thirst. So drinking to thirst is a typical recommendation. However, there are some limitations with that. So for one, thirst signals decline with age. It's kind of eye-opening, isn't it? Might be less thirsty now than you were 20, 30 years ago. Thirst also tends to be alleviated before complete hydration is achieved. So you may not be thirsty, but you may still not be adequately or let's say optimally hydrated. And it is also, the sensation of thirst is less sensitive during exercise. And the biggest reason is that most people do not recognize thirst signals well enough to regulate water intake adequately or appropriately. Typically, they suppress their signals because they're distracted by life, right? Screens, work, children, crises, just like hunger, right? You've noticed that with your hunger sensations, probably when you're bored, you feel more hungry. When you're busy, you're less hungry. You can go all day and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, everything stops and now I'm hungry. It wasn't that you weren't hungry, you just weren't in touch with your signals throughout the day. So that can, when we say drink to thirst, it's like, sure, in a perfect world where we can be paying attention to our thirst signals all day, that could work. But for most of us, it's probably not going to be enough on its own. So the other recommendation is the color of your urine. You've probably heard this. You don't want your urine to be clear, like no color at all. You may be overhydrated that way. But you also don't want it to be bright yellow or too saturated. That usually tells you that you're dehydrated. So typically the recommendation would be to drink enough water throughout the day so that your urine becomes light yellow or straw colored. Once again, this is not precise, and diet, medications, and vitamin use can affect urine color. If you've ever noticed that you take a multivitamin and then you get this bright neon yellow color in your urine, like that's not because your urine's oversaturated, that's the excess vitamins that you're urinating out. So that's also not precise, of course. And then, of course, we get to the biggest piece here, and this is the bio-individual factors that affect water requirements. And these are the same bio-individual factors that will affect our electrolyte balance, which we'll talk about in a minute. Age, activity level, climate or geographic region that you're in terms of how hot it is at that particular time, how humid it is, your health status, if you have chronic illnesses, your diet. So a note here about the diet, and we're going to definitely get into specifics for keto in a minute, but if you're consuming carbs, if you're, let's say you're trying to go keto and you keep messing up and putting carbs back in, and your carbs are in and out and in and out and in and out, and you're going like a week, and then you're putting carbs back in, and you're constantly going back and forth, or you heard that carb cycling was a great idea. So you're in the gym and you're having high carb days and low carb days, and your electrolyte balance and your hydration status are going to be all over the place, and it's going to be very difficult for your body to be in homeostasis, in balance, which is where it wants to be for optimal function. We're going to get into all the details about optimal function related to minerals in particular and hydration next. So think about that in terms of when you're going keto, we have to tightly control our electrolyte balance and get enough electrolytes and get enough hydration to hydrate ourselves from the hydration or the water that we're losing when we take the carbs out of our system. But if we're constantly putting carbs in and taking them out, we're disrupting that fluid balance pretty regularly. So something to think about. Also, processed packaged foods, even if it's keto, usually they're adding sodium. So we also need to take that into consideration. There's a difference if we're eating primarily a whole foods, real foods, ketogenic diet versus if we're relying on dirty keto and putting things in that have added minerals, electrolytes, particularly it's going to be sodium usually in those foods. That may throw that balance off as well. So dehydration is most commonly a cause of electrolyte deficiency, more so than a lack of water itself. Too much water can actually dilute electrolytes and make negative symptoms worse. So if you're consuming large amounts of water, you may need to exceed the electrolyte recommendations that I'm going to share later on. So we'll keep talking about that. I'll bring that up a few times. Let me see if there's any other comments. Facebook, no, cool. Okay, keep it rolling here. All right, so let's get into minerals. What are electrolytes and why do we need them? Here's the kind of fun sciencey stuff about minerals in general. So minerals compose 5% of the human body by weight, and they cannot be produced by the body. So they have to be obtained from food and beverages or supplements. Out of the 118 elements on the periodic table, 18 native element minerals are required for human health, while many more prove to be beneficial. And we'll talk about the macro and micro minerals in a moment. So minerals, what they actually do in the body, they act as cofactors or what we call helpers for enzyme reactions. So they are regulating all of these bodily systems, all of these functions within the human body. They regulate proper pH of the blood. They facilitate the transfer of nutrients across our cell membranes. So they also maintain proper nerve function, contracting and releasing of muscles, for example. They regulate tissue growth, and they provide structural and functional support to the body's systems. So everything that our body does needs minerals to be optimal. It's kind of a meme in the keto space now that we see, having a problem, it's electrolytes. I saw this meme where it was like, can't stand your partner, electrolytes. It's like, can't find a partner, electrolytes. Electrolytes is the answer to everything. Because we always say, oh, check your electrolytes. Oh, that's happening, check your electrolytes. But it's because electrolytes, minerals, help with every single function of the body. So we have macro minerals, and tell me if these sound familiar to you. These are the ones we need in large amounts: calcium, chloride, magnesium, sodium, sulfur, phosphorus, and potassium. Hello, electrolytes. All of our electrolytes are in that macro group. The micro minerals are what we call trace minerals, and you may see like things on the market like trace mineral drops. We only need these in trace amounts, but it is more difficult for us to get these days. So a trace mineral or a full spectrum mineral drop is a great idea just for general health, in my opinion. So these are things like boron, chromium, copper, germanium, iodine, iron, lithium, manganese, molybdenum, rubidium, selenium, silicon, and vanadium and zinc. Some of those are more familiar to us than others. Okay, now here's a really important note about minerals. They do not work in isolation. So each macro and micro mineral works in synergy with other available nutrients. Some are synergistic, enhancing the qualities of one another, and others are antagonistic, inhibiting or interfering with the physiological action of other nutrients. So, for example, the ones in particular that we would want to think about when we're thinking about electrolytes: magnesium and potassium. Magnesium enhances the cellular retention of potassium. So if you're getting enough potassium, but you're not getting enough magnesium, that can impact you negatively. And then the other big one is the antagonist, sodium and potassium. So they can inhibit one another. So you have to have sodium and potassium in the right balance, or else things can be thrown off. So the symptoms that we talk about experiencing during keto flu, for example, headaches, especially the big ones are always headaches and muscle cramps or aches. Yeah, usually it's the cramps and the headaches are the big two that I hear, but also things like hunger, and electrolytes truly can change your hunger signals. So if you're not, and you've heard this before about, I'm sure, about it may not be hunger, it may be thirst. So if you're not properly hydrated, it may not have anything to do with how much water you're drinking. You just may not have enough electrolytes. And once you get enough electrolytes with the water, then you're satisfying the thirst and you may not feel as hungry. So all of these things kind of play in the sandbox together. So, okay, so like I said, the body works to maintain homeostasis at all times. So while supplementation may be necessary, it is ideal to obtain as much as we can vitamins and minerals from nutrient-dense whole foods. However, this is difficult to do in our modern times because the soil is depleted and we can't get the same nutrition from our food as we once could. So that brings us to supplementation. Alice is asking about amounts. Yeah, okay, lots of questions about amounts. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Okay, so essentially, what are electrolytes? Electrolytes are minerals that are capable of conducting electricity when dissolved in water. And water depends on electrolytes for proper absorption. So this is why we say if you're drinking water without electrolytes, you may not absorb the water, so you may not get the hydration that you need. In general, balanced electrolytes with good hydration, with the proper amount of water, it makes sure that the appropriate nutrients get transported in and out of the cells for the proper function of all of our bodily systems, as I mentioned. Now, the reason why we usually need to supplement on a ketogenic or carnivore or even a low carb, whole foods, low carb diet is that the less processed foods we're eating, the less we're going to get of these minerals, particularly sodium. Processed foods, they're using sodium. But when we're eating whole foods, natural foods, they don't come with much sodium in them at all, if at all. Some of them, none. And then when we're not eating carbs in a certain amount, we lose water. 1 molecule of carbohydrate holds 3 molecules of water. So this is why you get that flush when you first go keto and you see on the scale, You dropped a bunch of weight in the first week, and then you're like, why am I not still losing weight? That was water weight. And I like to always recommend, especially for my ladies who stress out about the scale, I always love to recommend to get very familiar with how much water you lose when you take carbs out. So when you have an experience, let's say you have a oops, and you fall into the carbs, pay attention to what happens the next day and the day after that on the scale, and get very familiar with how much water weight you're adding and dropping when you put in and take out carbs. When you know that, that is such powerful information to have. I don't freak out about anything anymore after I have an indulgence, because I know exactly how much my body is going to hold on to and retain until I get that out of my system again. So just an aside there. Okay, now let's get into the amounts everybody wants to hear about. Okay, so exact amounts will vary, and I'm going to get into the nuances of that in a moment, but I'm going to give you some general numbers that you can track. And I'll drop this in the group if I haven't before. This comes from Keto Gains, where I coached for many years. They do all the scientific research and they share, so I trust their sources. So I'm going to give you their rules of thumb for numbers, and then I'm going to get into the nuance of how you can manage that for yourself to find your happy place, because it's not as simple as me saying, here's the numbers, now go do that. I want to caveat this before I share it by saying, just like I do with everything else, when I tell you about macros, when I tell you about changing things, I always say, do not drastically change anything overnight. If you're like, oh shoot, I'm nowhere near that, let me get to that tomorrow, you're going to totally throw your body off, and it is not going to be pleasant one way or another. So, okay, so take these numbers and then think about where you are. If you don't know where your current level of supplementation is, start tracking it. And I use Chronometer to track my nutrition, which I love because it is a very accurate database, and it has the ability to track your micro minerals, your micro nutrients. So you can track your supplements and you can look at your total numbers for the day, and it will include that which you got from your food. If you're using a different database, my Carb Manager, my Fitness Pal, or any of those other ones, I don't know how accurate their database is, so I can't speak to them, but Chronometer vets everything that goes in there. So it's more likely that you're going to get all of the information you need about the food you're eating. Let me also preface, notice I don't want to just tell you the numbers because people just love to run wild with numbers. Let me also preface that potassium is pretty high in red meats. So if you're eating red meats, and let's say you're tracking and you want to know how much you consumed and you think that you didn't consume much potassium at all, double check that your entries have the potassium listed. Because if you're scanning the package, the branding of the company where you bought the meat, it may not have the potassium listed. I always try to use, whenever possible, a USDA entry in Chronometer when I'm logging my meats, because they will include the micronutrition. A lot of the time, the brand stuff, if you're just scanning a package, it's not going to have it. So if you want to get that granular at tracking your numbers, just know that those kinds of things could throw things off. Also, coffee has potassium in it. So if you're not tracking your coffee, try tracking your coffee. Coffee also has carbs, if you didn't know. So you may be not realizing that you're having a couple more carbs, or if you're drinking a lot of coffee, you may be having more carbs in your day than you thought you were. So just a little aside for tracking. And then I'm going to get into, I certainly don't expect my clients to track their electrolytes this closely as much as I'm about to share with you. So stay tuned for the practical side of it after I give you the numbers. Okay, so numbers. Sodium, ideally on a well-formulated ketogenic diet, meaning a whole foods ketogenic diet, you want your sodium levels to be somewhere between 5 to 7 grams per day of sodium. This is 5,000 to 7,000 milligrams per day. Now, very important for you to know, a gram of sodium is not the same as a gram of salt. So don't get those two things confused. It's just like people thinking that a gram of chicken breast is a gram of protein. Very different. So, for instance, a quarter teaspoon of Redmond real salt is 1.4 grams. If you were to measure this with a micro scale, which is what I do. When I measure this out, I want to know exactly how much I'm getting. So 1.4 grams is a quarter teaspoon of salt, of the Redmond real salt. That would be 530 milligrams of sodium. So you can see how if you thought a gram of sodium was a gram of salt, it's not. Okay, it's about, really kind of about half. So about 500 milligrams for a little over a gram of salt. So let's say to get 5,000, let's say just from salt, let's say you just wanted to use Redmond real salt, to get 5,000 milligrams, you would need 10 servings of this. 10 quarter teaspoons. So that is 4 teaspoons? No. Quarter teaspoon times 4. 2 teaspoons and a half. Yeah. So 2.5 teaspoons of salt to get 5,000 milligrams of sodium a day, a little over 5,000, 5,300 to be exact. So the high end of the sodium, 7,000, that would be even more. So just putting it in perspective with just Redmond real salt. Now, that can include what you're getting from your foods, remember. So you don't have to get that all from supplementation. And that's the recommendation. So you could be on the low end of that. You could be on the higher end of that. You could exist somewhere in the middle. And we're going to get into your physiological ways of knowing you've found your sweet spot in just a moment. But kind of keep that in the back of your mind, 5,000 to 7,000 milligrams of sodium. Another recommendation that Keto Gains likes to make is, and I love this, is 1,000 milligrams before training sessions. I typically do maybe like 500 before a training session, particularly if I feel I need it. If I'm feeling kind of lethargic, sluggish, and I want a boost for my workout, instead of turning to pre-workout powders, I just take a half a scoop. I'll put some of this, put some element right in the palm of my hand and lick it, or take half a packet and put it in a bottle of water and chug it. It will help with alertness, clarity, focus, brain functions, and muscular functions, as we talked about earlier, how minerals play a role in muscular function. So in the gym, it can be really powerful. Talk about getting a pump and getting that vascular. You're going to see your veins popping. Yes, exactly, Celeste. Himalayan salt is similar. So all the salts are pretty much going to be similar in terms of the content of sodium for the serving size. The difference with Redmond real salt to most of the other salts you're going to find is that Redmond's, it has trace minerals in it as well. So it's unrefined, straight from the earth. Really, really good stuff. Okay. So that's the sodium. Potassium, 3,500 milligrams to 4,700 milligrams per day is the recommendation. Now, if you are consuming, like I said, coffee has it. I think even cocoa powder has it to an extent. Green veggies have potassium. So if you are keto or ketovore and you're doing green veggies as well as your meats, you're going to get some from your green veggies as well. Avocado has a good amount of potassium, more than a banana. So all this talk about banana being the best source of potassium is crap. Avocado is much better than that. Yeah, Sherry, you ordered Redmond's for the first time. I think you're really going to love it. So potassium, here's the thing with potassium. You have to be careful with potassium. And this was a question Michelle asked in the group about what if you get too much electrolytes? Too much sodium is just going to pee out. You may get bloating, you may get water retention, you may get swelling, you may get things happening when you have too much sodium, but it will pee out. You'll be okay. You probably just drink some more water and get it out of your system. Potassium can be dangerous if you get too much. The way that it works on the pumps of the heart. So be careful with your potassium. Do not supplement potassium unless you feel you need to. So this is, and we'll talk about supplementing them together because here's the key. Sodium and potassium need to be in balance. They need to be in a careful balance. So same kind of symptoms you can get from not having enough electrolytes or having too much electrolytes, you can get from simply being out of balance with your sodium and potassium. So it could be that it's not necessarily you're not getting enough or you're getting too much altogether, you just may be in the wrong ratios. So if you look at the numbers I gave you, potassium 3,500 on the low end, sodium 5,000 on the low end, that's about 70% potassium to sodium. Yes, I said that right. 70% potassium to sodium. So on the high end, about the same, 70%, 4,700 to 7,000. 4,700 milligrams per day of potassium is the high end. You don't want to go above that. So you don't want to be pushing your potassium really high. This is why if you see, and the one thing I don't have with me, because I think it's in my medicine cabinet because I don't really use them, potassium tablets, if you've ever seen those in the store, they're 99 milligrams. They're not going to sell you those tablets in high doses because it can be fatal. However, you can go to your grocery store in the salt section and you can get potassium chloride powder or crystals like salt. It's just like salt, pours just like salt. It's a salt substitute for people who are sensitive to salt. So sodium free is all just potassium chloride. And you could pour this to your heart's content and they're not regulating that. Isn't that interesting? But don't pour this to your heart's content. Also, I don't like the taste. I think this has a little bit, almost more of a sulfurous taste than salt. It's not as pleasant in my opinion. But this has 690 milligrams of potassium for the same serving size, 1.4 grams or a quarter teaspoon. So this is actually more potassium than a serving size of salt. Of sodium. So if you were to just take one serving size of each of these, you would be overdoing it on potassium and probably underdoing it on sodium. So you would probably want to go like half of this to one of these. Sure thing, Tina. Glad to have you on. So before we get to magnesium, because it's a little more cut and dry, sodium and potassium, I would say anywhere, because there are some in the space that recommend more of like a 50-50 split. There are others that go for more of a 30-70 split and others that go for a 70-30 split. So that's a wide range. I mean, you could be anywhere from 30% potassium to sodium all the way up to 70% potassium to sodium. That's a wide range. So once again, we're going to talk about finding your sweet spot. And my personal goal for anyone who follows me is that you are not tied to every little number. That's not a way to live. We want to live in a way that we can assess the situation based on how we're feeling, based on our symptomology, based on our, how optimized we feel, and adjust as we go without having to be so granular about everything all the time. My goal for everyone is to not have to track macros forever. We do that for a time so we know how to dial in, or if when we need to dial in again, we can do that. So if you've never tracked your electrolytes and you'd like to see if what you're doing is truly working for you, then pay attention. Like I always say, become the CEO of your body, pay attention to your body's signals, keep a diary, of how you're feeling throughout the day, and track your electrolytes for a few days, maybe up to a week, and take that along with your biofeedback and then say, what did I learn? And do I need to adjust anything based off of this? So we'll get into some specifics about that in a moment. Now, before I dive into magnesium, any questions so far on the potassium sodium?
I don't have a question, but I just have something I wanted to share, that if you do use Chronometer, and if you set those ranges in for sodium, potassium, and magnesium, it'll reflect in your daily diary as percentages. And so if you have the same percentage sodium to potassium, like say 80% to 80%, then you're getting that right ratio in. That's true statement?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
because
that's it.
I've found that really helpful. Then I don't have to, my balance is showing right there. If my percentages are about the same, then I have the balance.
Yes, and that's a great way to do it so that you're not like going into the numbers all the time and wait a minute, now what do I have to adjust? So yeah, thanks for that. Yes, you can set your levels in Chronometer. That's another beautiful thing about Chronometer. I don't know if other apps allow you to do that, but you can set your recommended levels for any vitamin and mineral that you want. I think they default to RDA levels on most things. So I would go in and double check your sodium, potassium, and magnesium and set it where you want it to be during that time that you decide, okay, I want to track and kind of get my arms around this and understand where I am. It's great to be able to use those percentages, just like it tells you with your macros, right? It's going to tell you if you're over by a percentage or under by a percentage. It does the same thing with your micros. So that is a great way of managing that. Thanks, Kelly. Lisa asks, I live in Arizona and find I do better on more than 7,000 sodium in the summer. I do keep my potassium at the high end, but I don't go over. Is that the correct way to supplement? Yes, that is definitely the correct way to do it. If you need to, like, let's say you're at the high end of both potassium and sodium, you're at that ratio, but you still feel dehydrated, you still feel like you need more sodium, keep adding the sodium, do not keep adding potassium. That may take you, Lisa, that when you're in the summer, it may take you more to that 50-50, or it may take you more to that 30% potassium to sodium, and that's totally fine. Like I said, that 30 to 70% is a wide range. Some do better on one end to the other. Celeste says, I bought light salt, but it has dextrose. Darn it. Can't stand how they sneak dextrose into everything. Yeah, the totally salt-free, which is usually it's called no salt. This was Morton's salt substitute. They usually don't have anything else. This has fumaric acid, silicon dioxide, and monocalcium phosphate. I imagine those are stabilizers or additives for freshness or whatever. But I rarely use this, and I'll get to that in a minute. I'll tell you kind of what I do, how I manage it for myself. Sometimes I feel like the more water with electrolytes I drink, the more dehydrated or thirsty I feel. Take that along with your other bodily symptoms. So, because I will notice too, like there's that feeling of like saltiness that makes me not feel, I don't know if I would call it thirsty though. I don't think it's the same. It's not really the same as thirst. It may be a sensation, and that's not necessarily thirst. But we have to take that with all of the other biofeedback. So if you're not having any symptoms and you're functioning well, it may not be an issue. Or you could be over hydrating or over consuming electrolytes. Okay, let's talk about magnesium, and then we'll get into all of the nuances here. So magnesium's pretty cut and dry. Anywhere from 350 to 500 milligrams is a good recommendation for what you want to have per day. Best sources for magnesium, if you're talking about supplementation, and you can get magnesium from your food as well. Green veggies, if you're incorporating veggies into your diet, is a good source for that. But in order of bioavailability, meaning it's available to your body to absorb, magnesium aspartate, lactate, citrate, then glycinate, then oxide, then chloride, gluconate, and then carbonate. Bronson takes the glycinate. A lot of people really do well on glycinate or aspartate when they're doing tablets or capsules. These are capsules and the glycinate. These are 120 milligrams each, and he takes 3 of these a day, I believe. I like to use the Natural Vitality Calm magnesium supplement. This is the unflavored, now that I'm on Lion diet. But they have all kinds of flavors, and the flavors are really yummy. And that has some citric acid in it, natural flavor, and stevia. So if you are sensitive to citric acid, which some people are, people with histamine, issues with histamine can react to citric acid. So keep that in mind. But I really like this, and this is magnesium carbonate, which is supposedly on the low level, but it works fine for me. I also love, and I don't have it here, but it's in my bathroom, is the oil spray, magnesium oil, that absorbs through your skin. So if you're not a capsule person, if you're not a powders person, the oil is something you could try. Also, Epsom salt baths are magnesium. So that absorbs through your skin. So if you're taking Epsom salt baths, consider that you're getting your magnesium that way as well. In a minute, I'll get into like all the different kinds of electrolyte options on the market that you could go for and what my recommendations are there. But yeah, magnesium is a lot simpler. You don't have to worry about the balance with the other electrolytes as much. Just make sure you're getting some. Magnesium is really, really key for optimal health. And most people are not getting enough magnesium. So, okay. All right, I'm gonna go back up to all the questions, make sure I answer all of them. All right, we talked about amounts. Okay, so for those who use Element, and I had a question in there earlier about using 2 packets of Element a day and take magnesium pills. So your magnesium, Alice, on point, 400 milligrams, beautiful. If you're doing 2 Element a day, that means you're getting 2,000 milligrams of sodium through supplementation. So each packet of Element is 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. So you're getting a little bit of potassium and magnesium with that sodium as well. So 2,000 is going to be low if that's all you're getting, but I imagine that you are salting your foods as well. And somebody else asked a question about salting foods. What was that question? Now I can't find the question, but somebody was asking about salting foods. So everything counts and everything rolls up together. So if you are salting your foods heavily and you are supplementing with electrolytes, you may be getting more than you need. So take a look at, once again, your urine color is a good signifier of that. If you're, for me, I notice like, if I'm tasting salt all the time, it's like, okay, I need to chill out. It's a little much. Salting to taste is also a really good way of like, how does your food taste? If you feel it needs more salt, your body's telling you it's craving more salt. So you probably need to salt your foods more heavily. If you are going the route of tracking your electrolytes, I highly recommend that for the days that you're tracking, what you're supplementing with, you also track what you're using to salt your foods. So a rule of thumb, or a good way to do that, is to take, I don't know, a teaspoon or so, measure out how many grams and put it in like a little shot glass or something, and use that throughout your day. And then if you finish the entire thing, you know exactly how much you used. If you didn't finish the whole thing, You can weigh it back out when you pour it back in your container, and you'll see how much you have left, and then you'll know how much you used throughout the day. Either that, or you can weigh it out every time you have a meal and you're pouring from here, and you measure that out and you track it that way. I've done both before as ways of really regulating that. I had to do that for peak week. My coach wanted to know, how much sodium are we consuming? Every day I had to tell him with each meal, what were my macros, how much sodium was I consuming, so he could help make sure that everything was in balance. Yay, Alice, you have the supplement spray. Yeah, I like that stuff. Okay, something Jen did that you said on the in the group was key too. You said that after you increased your water and consistently added electrolytes, you saw a huge difference in your performance. So here's the thing, y'all. Your performance in the gym is tied to this too. You know, like I said, getting that extra little salt shot before the gym is a great way of boosting your performance. So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about the nuances of regulating this. How do I find my sweet spot, right? It can play out in many different ways. The headaches and the cramps are the central signs when you're first going keto, carnivore, you're cutting out the carbs, you know you're going to be dropping a bunch of electrolytes and you need to replace them. That can happen. That happened to me a little bit with the Lion diet with leg cramps. I added potassium because I was cutting back on how much element I'm drinking, because I'm trying to phase out all of the flavored things and things with stevia in them. So I cut back from 3 to 4 packets a day to 1.5 to 2. So I was like, well, I'm not getting the potassium that I normally get from here, so I'll supplement a little bit of it. That did not help. The cramps got worse. So I think with the shift in my diet to more red meat, I was getting plenty of potassium from my red meat, and my body didn't need as much. And I was not tracking my micronutrients. I was just listening to my body. Tried adding the potassium in. It did not help my symptoms. Now I took the potassium back out. Tried that for a couple of days, and the symptoms regulated within the week of consistency with my diet, which is another key thing. Don't change all your variables at once if you're trying to optimize. You've got to regulate your variables. So, you know, getting to a place where you're eating kind of consistent things while you're trying to manage that electrolyte balance is a good idea. Doesn't mean you have to eat all the exact same meals forever or for the next month or two, but if you're going to try to get your electrolytes in the right balance, you know, manage and try to have more consistent, similar foods for like a week and watch what happens with your electrolytes, and then you can kind of play around with it that way. Let's see if there's other questions in here. Cool. Okay, other symptoms. So fatigue is very much tied to electrolytes. Sodium in particular, this is too funny because Tiffany just the other day brought up and asked me about adrenal cocktails, because somebody sent her a thing saying, oh, do you do this? You know, taking an adrenal cocktail in the morning. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but this is a concept of helping your adrenals function properly in the morning to help you get the energy that you need. Your adrenal glands are drivers of your energy. So if you've heard of adrenal fatigue, that's like when they say your adrenals are working insufficiently and so you're not getting what you need. So sodium helps the adrenals function properly. So in the morning, you do not need these adrenal cocktails with orange juice and coconut water and all the things with the sugar. If you notice over the years, all of the like old school sports drinks on the market, the electrolyte beverages, all contain sugar. And there's this concept, fitness industry has perpetuated it for way too long, that we need carbs to get all these other things in our system, right? Yes, carbs are hydrating on their own, but you do not need to add carbs to an electrolyte solution or drink to get the electrolytes, to get hydrated. You can just have the electrolytes with the water without the sugar. So if you see anything like that, you don't need the OJ, you don't need the juices. The key with the adrenal cocktail is the sodium. So you could take a salt shot in the morning, put a little bit in a shot glass, fill it up with water, down that baby. It's one of the ways I love to start my morning. More so than my regular electrolyte drink, which I drink all day long. And I know Michelle was asking about the overconsumption and also about drinking it all day long. Actually, I think that's a better way to do it, is to drink it all day long so that your body is getting that balance throughout the day and not like throwing a bunch at it at one time and throwing it a bunch at it at another. I do know some people that prefer to take their electrolytes, in drops or in powders and water, like as a concentrated solution 2 or 3 times a day. If that works for you, great. I prefer to just have that slow drip throughout the day. But let's say you're a person who doesn't want to drink salty water and you'd rather just, chug a quick thing and go about your day. If that's working, if you're not struggling, fatigue, headaches, muscle cramps, performance issues in the gym, right? Maybe you're like, man, I don't get it. I'm eating enough macros. I've increased maybe how much fats I'm consuming, and I know I'm getting enough energy, but I just can't push in the gym. And it's lasting more than a day or a week, because ladies, with our cycles, even in menopause, we are going to have times where we're not able to push as hard in the gym, and that's okay. And that might happen for a few days. It might happen for a week. If it's happening for weeks, now we need to look at something else going on. Maybe it is an adrenal issue. Maybe it's something, deeper than you've got your nutrition down and your training, and you're not making progress in the gym in terms of getting stronger, and you're struggling through your workouts. Always look at sleep, look at stress levels, because those things matter too. Mental stress can have a massive impact on your performance in the gym. So we don't live in a vacuum. We're not in a lab. We can't look at these things, completely isolated. We have to look at 360-degree view of our biofeedback, but take it all in consideration in terms of whether or not we might need to change something with our electrolytes. And Bronson mentioned, if you're experiencing constipation, one of the biggest things, there's 2 things with constipation: not hydrated properly, not enough fats. That's usually the 2 things that when I recommend those 2 things, everything moves. The other caveat is there may be foods that you're consuming that are exacerbating that. So dairy being a big one. Dairy is a big contributor to constipation, and certain processed packaged foods, especially those highly processed protein bars. Tiff mentioned in the group today, ask Natalie how she feels about Quest bars. Anything on the market is better than a Quest bar. Anything. I'm like, they put soluble corn fibers in there. I mean, stuff you do not want in your system. The fibers that they're throwing in there will screw up your gut. So look at all that stuff once again, and not jumping to the conclusion that it's an electrolyte issue. But electrolytes, proper hydration with enough water and electrolytes can certainly help you go. That's going to be, and if you're having loose stools and you have not, like, let's say, simply just switched to a carnivore diet, because typically that happens when you take all the fiber out right away. But if it's not something like that, and you're experiencing loose stools on keto, you may be getting a salt water flush. This is how they clean you out for colonics, salt water flush. So if you're getting too much salt and water, it will come out that way as well. So your bowel habits are a really great indicator. Your fatigue, your energy levels, fatigue levels, those muscle cramps, the headaches, and other functions of the body. If you're not feeling optimal, look at electrolytes. If you think you've got everything else dialed in, look at electrolytes. It's usually going to be the next thing to go to. and it can solve most of the problems that people say are problems with keto are usually problems with electrolytes. So all these things people are saying you need carbs for, you actually need electrolytes. So don't be fooled by thinking, oh, I need carbs for my athletic performance. I need carbs to recover better. I need carbs for proper brain function. Dial in the electrolytes first, because usually that will solve the problem. Any other questions? And I'm going to jump back and make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, we were going to talk about all the different ones. Oh, there's the question about the salting food. Do you still salt your food a lot, regardless of how much electrolytes you consume in water? It all has to be in balance with one another. So if you're consuming a lot of electrolytes in supplement form, you may not need to salt your food as much. You may want to salt your food more and not consume as much in electrolytes. Okay, and then we have questions about brand recommendations, so we'll go through that. So let's ask about Soleil water. So is anybody on this call is a person who does Soleil water? I thought you did, Kelly, because I have never done it personally, so I cannot actually speak to this. But her question was how to measure Soleil water in comparison to, I suppose, other electrolytes, because she said she
So,
yeah.
because math, and I'll go grab my bottle and I'll bring it in for show and tell. I dump my Himalayan pink salt into a glass bottle. The bottle's about that high and there's about that much salt in the bottom of it. And they fill the rest with filtered water. And you have to let that sit overnight so the water is saturated with the sodium. And you know when you have enough salt in the bottom, it literally melts and it'll leave behind pieces of salt if and when the water gets saturated with sodium. So all of that said, 1 tablespoon of that solution has 1,434 milligrams of sodium.
Ooh, okay, that's awesome.
And so I built that into my chronometer as a custom record of just Soleil water. And it's the way I built it. You can populate your chronometer custom records with your minerals and your micro minerals. And so this one I have, and it's 1 tablespoon of Soleil water has 1,434 milligrams of sodium. So
that is awesome. And do you know how much salt you're putting in there?
I just eyeball it. I just dump it in because it's the solution that matters. And once the salt stops dissolving, then you know you have saturated water, and saturated with sodium tap water or filtered water is Soleil water. I'll go get my bottle for show and tell.
Oh,
and
cool.
I'll be right
back.
back.
Thanks.
I have to go in the other room anyway, so I'll be right back.
Cool. Okay. I'm glad we had somebody on here that could go into that. Oh, cool. Lisa does it too. So Celeste, you got some people to lean on as you work through that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about brands while Kelly goes to get us the jar to show us. Okay, liquid drops, Sarah was asking about. Keto Chow has, here we go. These are their fasting drops, and I think they have another one as well. They have, Michelle was just talking about this in another call. Michelle, if you're still with us, remind me the name of Keto Chow's other drops.
Magnesium.
They do the magnesium?
Yeah, they have the magnesium, and then they have Dr. Berry's minerals.
Okay, I thought so, because there's the fasting drops is different, I think, in the makeup of it than Dr.
Yeah.
Berry's. Okay.
Completely different. Dr. Berry's, you can take Dr. Berry's and it covers both of them.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because this one, the fasting drops, it's got 220 milligrams of sodium and 36 milligrams of magnesium and 22 milligrams of potassium. So this is like 1/10 potassium to sodium. So it's mostly sodium. And this is in half a teaspoon. So, and this is something I'll say about most of the electrolyte powders on the market or electrolyte supplements on the market are not very saturated, right? Like you have to do a teaspoon of this to get 200 milligrams of sodium. That's not near what you need in a day. So there are other ones too. I'm trying to think of who else has the drops. I can't think off the top of my head, but I'll do a little digging on that. But I know of Keto Chow. I know that they're one of the companies that offers a few different types of drops.
You ready for show and tell?
Yes.
All right. Hopefully I don't dump it on my computer screen. So this is the bottle I've been using forever, and it's just a bottle of Himalayan pink salt, the rock salt. But if you look really closely, it's powdered at the bottom, which is the leftover rock from the salt. And then as you go up, I had dumped in some white crystals recently.
I see that. Yep.
And because the water is already saturated, they aren't dissolving any further.
Oh,
so-
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And so this is a 20-ounce bottle. So I have about, I'm getting into it, but I would say this is about a half a cup of salt crystals that I dumped in the bottom or had in the bottom, and I filled up the top with filtered water. And then overnight, you'll see that first you put in crystals, and then 24 hours later, it's mostly dissolved. And then
That
all
is
that's left
so
behind are the
cool.
minerals that come with the Himalayan pink salt. So this is basically the same taste as seawater because it's saturated with salt. So when you ask how much salt to put in there, it's like dump in about an inch in the bottle of a 20-ounce bottle and fill up the rest of your bottle with water because chemistry does the rest.
That is so cool. I've never tried that myself. So thanks for that lesson.
You're welcome.
And Michelle tells me that it's called Daily Mineral Drops from Keto Chow. Yes. And I think I just found them here. I wanted to look at what those numbers were. The key here, though, is now that you know kind of what to aim for, the biggest thing to take away from this masterclass is figure out where you're at now, right? Take your own biofeedback. If you think that you need to optimize further, figure out where you are now. And then I always say slowly move in the direction that you should be in instead of making major changes. Let's see. So
this is a daily minerals bottle.
oh, thank you. Okay. So what are the numbers on that?
Let me see. I'm looking for sodium 600,
Okay.
chloride 2400, magnesium 400, baron 2.7, copper 2, iodine 300, chromium 75, potassium 1000, zinc 15.
Oh, wow. Potassium's
Manganese
1,000?
12.5, selenium 75, and oh boy, what's that word? Molybdenum.
Molybdenum, yeah.
There you go, 50, and that is 1 tablespoon, 15 milliliters.
Wow. So that has more potassium
Everything.
than sodium.
Yeah, I take that daily.
And I imagine that is probably because that they are assuming that people are going to be salting their foods well. So they're, when you take it in context of that, then it would work. Then it should work pretty well. What I have noticed is that whenever I have tried the electrolyte powders that have more potassium than sodium, I am running to the bathroom. So there's a few brands that have sent me stuff to try and to promote. And then I tried them and I was like, I cannot promote your product. I'm sorry. It tastes really good, but my existence is this is not the best way to live. This particular one had 1,000 potassium and only 10 milligrams of sodium. So this is just like pure potassium. But they also had calcium, magnesium, chloride, and trace minerals, but it is mostly potassium. And then this guy, oh, this is perfect keto. This one had 600 potassium to 240 sodium, and it had 250 magnesium, which was a pretty good blend. I don't remember what it was that I didn't like about this one. I don't know if I just didn't like the flavor. Like it might have been too sweet.
It was too sweet for me.
Yeah, right?
Way
Okay,
too sweet for me. I was like, oh my God, I'm drinking syrup. I can't do this.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, because they use, and this one also has citric acid, malic acid, stevia.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it was. It was too sweet. I was like, I cannot
Yeah. It
deal.
sent me to the bathroom really fast too.
Yeah, and I noticed that a lot usually with the high potassium ones. This one, the coffee company, y'all know that I love, with the flavored coffees, they came out with hydrates for the coffees and hydrates for water. This one's peach, so this was for water, but they have ones for coffees, which I loved. And sometimes I would make I would take the coffee flavors because they were like sweet flavors, like oh gosh, like a brown sugar and like different ones to use for like protein pancakes and stuff. But they add sucralose was the second to last ingredient, but sucralose, I avoid sucralose like the plague. Sucralose can cause major cravings. Sucralose as well as maltodextrin and dextrose. So anything that you see those in, I highly encourage you to avoid. This one also has potassium, phosphorus, magnesium, chloride. It's a 1-to-1 sodium to potassium, so this is about the same. This one was another company, and this one has BCAAs in it as well, which I don't generally recommend using. Unnecessary if you're getting enough real food, animal-based protein. But this one also has, this is like a multivitamin almost. This has all the B vitamins, but once again, 300 potassium and 250 sodium. So almost 1-to-1, but more potassium to sodium. And I think this one was too sweet. I didn't like the flavor on that one either. So always look at the ingredients. This doesn't have any terrible ingredients, but it does have like cellulose gum, malic acid, citric acid, silicon dioxide. It's just excess stuff that is unnecessary and not beneficial. My next favorite in terms of the numbers, but I didn't like the cool lime flavor. But this is from Paleo Pro. This is the same company where I recommend the protein powders, the beef isolate that they have. They their numbers are pretty good. They're a gram of sodium, so 1,000 milligrams of sodium to 200 milligrams of potassium. Same thing that you're going to find in the Element. But I just don't love that cool lime, and that's the only. They might have one other flavor I'm gonna try. My all-time favorite is still Element. If you're using something else like Ultima, for instance, Ultima are great for flavoring your water. I believe they're only sweetened with stevia and they don't have any other sweeteners in them. But they do not have practically any electrolytes. And a lot of the electrolyte supplements on the market are either going to add sugar or they're not going to be the right numbers. They're just way too low. They're trying to capitalize on this electrolyte thing. So all the sports powders and everything, just make sure you're watching closely. You're reading ingredients. You're looking at the numbers of the electrolytes that they have in them to see if it's worth your money. For a while there, when I was just getting used to it, getting used to Element, and I wasn't used to like the salty bitter flavor with Element, I really liked Ultima, so I would mix the two together. I used the Ultima basically as a flavoring, and then I used the Element for my actual electrolyte content. But then too, you have things like these tablets. So this was also from Keto Chow, and this has one tablet has 100 milligrams of potassium and 116 milligrams of sodium. So it's about a 1-to-1. It also has phosphorus, chloride, or magnesium, but it's very low. It's a low dose, right? So how many of these freaking tablets would you have to get? You're not going to be able to get everything you need from these in a day without downing a ton of tablets. So look at the numbers, look at the ingredients, consider how you like to take your supplements. Yes, Kelly, great point about the Soleil water. Putting 1 tablespoon in at least 8 ounces of water. Better to be in a big bottle, sip it throughout the day. Otherwise, it can have a laxative effect. Yeah, and I'm sure it's also a very salty flavor if it was highly concentrated.
It's very nasty. Some people can take it like 1 tablespoon as a shot, but it's very harsh. So I pour 1 tablespoon from this into my 32-ounce water bottle, and that's just right.
Nice. Okay, cool.
And that was a pro tip learned by experience.
we trial and error, baby. Another little trial and error thing, if you drink sparkling water, if you like your LaCroix, whatever you call that thing, or the bubblies or any of like the flavored sparkling waters, or even just regular sparkling water, or if you have a soda stream and you make sparkling waters, you got to be careful when you're putting your electrolytes in there because it will react and it can erupt. So small amount of water to the container that it's in, and then carefully pour your electrolytes in there.
Bronson, he taught me a trick. Like when I do my hold on a minute, baby. When I do my element in my seltzer water, put ice in it first, then put it in there, and then he did a video about it. I was like, this man is brilliant. No wonder Natalie loves him so much. He's so smart.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's really good to know. Yeah, because
the water keeps it from doing that. Or the ice, I mean.
I'll
Sorry,
never
I'm so
forget
tired.
putting it in a Perrier bottle, being out somewhere. Yeah, like at a club. I think we actually did that as an experiment when we were in Vegas.
I did that. I was so embarrassed. It shot all over my bus. I was like, oh.
Oops.
I have a little bit of a mess. Oops. Yeah.
Oopsie daisy.
But yeah, put it in ice. If you put ice in your bottles, whenever I make it at home, I just pour it in my bottles, my Perrier, when I buy the lemon and the lime, and I like to put half of a citrus. It's so good.
Okay,
Element.
I can see that. Yeah.
So good. And then, put ice in there, and it's like, I watched him do it online. I was like, how did this guy come up with this stuff?
Trial and error.
Like, who would have thought?
All the times he's done the soda streams, and like if he's distracted doing the soda stream and putting the element in, it's like, oops, experiments in the kitchen.
Yeah, put ice in there. It cuts it. Smart.
That is awesome. That's brilliant. All right, that's good to know. Sharon was asking about other brands from Element. So I talked about all of these. Aside from Element, my second favorite would be Relight from Redmond's. So Redmond's Real Salts. They have an electrolyte line. We actually don't have any with us right now. It does not, though, and this is kind of to Kelly's point about the Soleil. Real Salt is not going to shake up like Element does immediately. You can't just put it in a bottle of water, shake it up and down it. You can, but it's going to settle at the bottom. You're going to have the grit. So the key with if you're going to try the Redmond's Relight, is to mix it the night before and leave it in the fridge overnight, because then it can dissolve and it can saturate into the water. But if you're just drinking it, you may get like the little sand. It'll be like sand pieces in your mouth and stuff like that. And that's actually what I've been doing with my cutting back on my flavors. For Lion Diet, I will fill up my water bottle and do like half of as much Element as I used to do. And now I just supplement it with the Real Salt. And I'm not adding additional potassium, and that seems to be working fine for me. So the other key too is that it may change for you over time. you know, you may be rocking with the 70% ratio for a while, and then that may not work for you anymore after a while. If you're ramping up your physical activity, if you have a season change and it gets hotter and you're sweating more, times of particularly high stress, you can benefit from more sodium. If you're not sleeping well, that's going to impact things. So you got to look at, once again, as I always say, look at everything, be the CEO of your body, learn how your body is responding to things, start to get curious, make notes, track your biofeedback, and you will always be in driver's seat, and you don't have to have somebody else telling you arbitrarily what you need to do for your body. Any final thoughts or questions? Celeste got Paleo Pro protein. It is so good in coffee. Yes, it is, girl. Tell me which one you got. My personal favorite is the Build Your Own. It's like a custom creation. And I do just the beef isolate, and then I add beef organs to it. You don't taste it at all. And the cookies and cream, I think is what they call it. That flavor is really good. And the OG caramel is my second favorite. I did share a while back in the group my supplement recommendations. So I will pull that back up and share that link again. I have a bunch in my Amazon store that I will share, and then I can put my direct links so you can get discounts with my code for Relight, for anything from Redmond Real Salt. Bronson and I have a code, and my referral link for Elements. If you buy, I do get benefits for that. It is just a referral link though, it is not a discount. I need to get one of those from Elements because I've been a loyal customer for a very long time. And I think that Bronson also has a code for Keto Chow, so I will dig that up and I'll share those with you as well. Always like to share the wealth. Yes, Alice, I did do a video on supplements and protein powder, so I will tag you in that masterclass. It was one of the very first ones I did. Everybody was asking about supplements, but it would probably be a good time to do another supplements masterclass. That one I think revolved around, we had a lot of questions about pre-workout, fat burners, and I think I went into protein on that one. I'll double check, but I'll definitely tag you where that is posted in the group. And then, yeah, I think I will drop a post later this week asking for just supplement in general, supplement questions, things y'all want to know about supplements, and I'll do a whole other supplements masterclass. That could be one of our Q&A masterclasses that is more of like driven by the things you want to know than a particular topic. So we'll do that again. I need new ideas for masterclasses, so always free to send me stuff. Oh, Lisa mentioned she found bulk supplements, potassium powder. Yes, bulk supplements, by the way, in general, is a great place to save money on your supplements. Bulk supplements, you can find anything, and they have like, they package their stuff in bags. So it's not like in all of the fancy marketing labeled containers and everything. So you can save money on that. You can find pretty much anything there in bulk. And Vitacost can be a great place to find supplements for a good price. And then who else was I going to mention? True Nutrition, which I also have. Bronson has a code for them as well. I can drop. True Nutrition has every protein powder you can imagine and a whole bunch of other supplements. And they too are no frills. So it's kind of like the Lidl or the Aldi of the supplement world. So you save money there. Grace says she uses Propel Mix, salt and no salt. So I don't know about Propel. I don't know what's in it. I don't know if they have additives, if they have sweeteners. I haven't looked at that in a million years. Typically, if it's a big name brand, I avoid it. Gatorade, Powerade, Propel, all those things. But yeah, I don't know what's in the Propel mix. Maybe share a a photo of your label so we can see what's in it, that would be helpful. I love the chat tonight. Y'all are engaged. It's so much fun. It's so much more fun when there's more than just me talking. So thank you for making this fun. I know we went way over. So I will go ahead and end off here. But thank you for joining me and making this a more interactive masterclass. I like it when it's like this. So I hope to see you on the next one. Drop your requests for topics, and I'll start building out what the next few masterclasses are going to be about. All right, ladies, have a wonderful Monday night. Go kill it this week. And for those in the challenge, I will see you on Wednesday evening. Bye.